All right, so just letting in a couple more people. And I've started a chat as well. And for the people that have just joined, I am supposed to tell you we are recording this. And in the chat, we can certainly put on questions. And I've already put two things on the chat. One of them was a link right near the top, which was how to set parental controls. And there's also, if you scroll up in the chat, there's also a book called The Text Solution that a couple of our teachers recommended. And it's actually a book, 6-step plan for creating healthy habits for kids growing up in the digital world. So to start, tech use has always been a parental concern. I was thinking when I was driving home about how the control was when I was growing up, because I'm old. There was a phone in the kitchen. It was attached to the wall and it had a cord and it wasn't even very long. And the best I could do was go around the corner, and I would have dearly loved to take that phone to my room because my parents always heard everything I said, but I couldn't. So that was that. So the parental control was right there. I remember having a transistor radio and thinking I was really sneaky when I had it under my pillow and could listen to music at night. But beyond that, there was lots of parental control in our house. Now, and I've been through this with my children as well, the world has opened up and there's lots of things, some that our kids know more about than we do. And we have some issues because it is hard enough to work with adolescents sometimes, let alone try to control some of the things they want to do. So the three of us, Ryan and Adrian and I, can certainly give you some advice, but we don't necessarily know the concerns. We could guess, but if someone wanted to start by asking a question, I see this, instead of being a presentation, much more about talking together about some of the things that are occurring for us, some of the things we know, and some of the things we're worried about. So if anybody has a concern or they just want us to keep talking.
I'm curious what the parents were hoping to learn tonight from us. Were there certain things that you were hoping to learn or problems that we were hoping to solve for you?
Good start. Maybe they could put that in the chat. Okay. Okay, question on time limits. I was going to suggest that there's, to me, two concerns. That is how long kids are on devices. And I think the other concern would be what kids are doing when they're on their devices and they're not doing schoolwork. And I think we've got some information to share with you on both of those areas, but let's start with time limits. Does anyone have a strategy for time limits? I think we have shy participants. So what kind of time limits and what types of parental controls do people use? Just to get started, as people are warming up, in the chat.
I can jump in on this one if that's helpful.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, here, I'll get my camera going. I've got a big project in the basement, so bear with me. I've got my paintbrush in hand, but okay. This is a big one for us. We've been, we have set some what we think are strict time limits, but at the same time, we're not really sure what is strict and what is not. Our daughter's in grade 6, and obviously, you know, remote learning, she does have access to her laptop in her bedroom, for example. So, you know, we've set time limits on her iPad where she can have 30 minutes a day of social media time. So whether that's TikToking or YouTubing or whatever she's doing. But what has become a little bit more challenging is in some of this downtime with school, you know, she might be on there watching some of these YouTube videos with, you know, these kids that are all over YouTube, whatever it is. And so we're just not sure how unhealthy that is for her. We have what we believe are really open and honest conversations about some of the challenges about getting, you know, stuck into the world of social media and internet, and, you know, that people can kind of put whatever they want to onto the internet, and you can read that and take it for what it is. But we just don't know what the right amount is, and maybe that's different for every child. So yeah, we're just hoping to hear a little bit of conversation around that.
Okay. There's some questions starting in the chat. Are there ways to filter content on TikTok? Before we start talking about TikTok, there are certainly ways to filter content, and there are ways to put parental controls on all the devices. And in some of the links we're going to share with you, it goes device by device, but there's a whole bunch of things that we don't know as parents unless we do a little more looking into those things. And as Ryan pointed out to me today, and maybe Ryan, you could share that, what you said about putting parental controls on. Ryan shared with me that for every link you look at, almost beside the link, it's how to get around parental controls, and that's for the kids to look at. So we're in a world where if kids want to find something, they can find it as well. And I don't know if I would chalk it up all to being sneaky. A large part of it is about being sneaky or private, but some of it is just the way the kids have on navigating their world. They're the ones that are going to go in and find these things, and they're going to hear things from their friends, and they're going to try it. So the main concern, I think, as adults we have is that, as that parent just shared, that what happens if they get to those places we don't want them to be, and how do we help them filter some of those things? So certainly setting time limits helps us to feel secure, but in even a few minutes, if a kid's bent on getting somewhere, they're going to try to get there. I think from the school, you know what we need kids to do, and we haven't had a lot of choice but to use devices this year because it's helped us to keep school as we know it afloat. But yes, that puts devices in the hands of kids that can access other things. So the first things that we see at grade 5 and 6 are the idea of friends. And it's filtered away to be someone that I am connected with on a social media site. And we have kids that are friends with everybody in their class. Homeroom will set up a chat room with everybody in the class, or they'll start navigating out to a small group within the class, or to a larger group in the school, or connect with kids in other schools. And very quickly, sort of like telling a grade 5 girl that she should never share her locker combination. Just so you know, that doesn't work, because inevitably in October you have a grade 5 girl in your office crying because somebody's in their locker and she didn't want them to be, and that's because they had a tiff, and to get back, the other girl shared the locker combination. So those things are easy to say, but not necessarily easy to fix, especially when the student or the child just feels they have to fix it themselves. So in the office, Ryan and I do a lot of talking about blocking people. Yes, social media is here, but you need to control it, and you don't have to put up with the rude messages. And we talk about their digital footprint, and what you put up on whatever social media is going to be up there, even if you think it disappears after a while, like some of the sites do. Sometimes people take pictures and then they send it around a different way. So kids think it's very impersonal, and so they tend to put things up on there that they wouldn't necessarily say. And then in they're looking for social media, or somebody saying, did you hear about Discord, which somebody just asked about? Then people go to that site to see what it's like. So there's a question about Discord.
And Peggy, I put up a website called commonsensemedia.org. I put the whole site down there, and it answers a few of the questions. Like, it answers how you can set controls for time limits for students. It does talk about can I set parental controls for specific apps, such as Snapchat, such as TikTok, and those. Yes, you can, and it walks you through all those steps on how to do that. But it's sometimes it can get complicated because each app might have a different solution. So if you're concerned about TikTok, you might have to address only TikTok. But the website that I put up deals with a lot of the questions that I've already heard people asking. And it depends on your device as well. Like it talks about how to set parental controls on phones versus Android devices versus this versus that. So you have to look for your specific need and then address it that way.
Okay. Does anybody want to weigh in on Discord? Please turn on your mics, and you don't have to show your faces, but if you have questions or comments, we're all in this together, and I can certainly keep talking, but I don't know if I'm hitting on what people want to hear. So how about Discord? Is anyone having issues or thoughts on the social media app Discord? So we've got somebody, as people can see in the chat, not a fan. But what do you do with that, right? If you're not a fan of it, but okay, good question. How do you take it away from your child when all their friends are in it? I think basically if we wanted to put a summary statement on all of tonight, there it is. How do you put time limits on devices? How do you take something away or say you're not allowed to use Snapchat or you're not allowed to use Discord when the response is, well, everybody else does it? And there is the perennial parent issue. And I told you at the beginning about the phone in the kitchen, and my parents would say you need to be in the house at 9 o'clock, and I could try, well, my friends are still out there, and the rule was 9 o'clock. I can say that maybe it was easier back then, but it is okay to have rules that are different than other people in the neighborhood. And that goes back to the relationship you have and the open and honest back and forth that you have with your kids. I am not sitting here saying it's easy, but to me, if you are not a fan of Discord and you don't want your child to use it, then I would block it using those parental controls and say you can talk to your friends using this. This is one I like. Does that work, or does that cause a problem in your home? I think to respond to that question, never heard of it. I think we're all going to be in that place because all the time a new something's going to come up. Like within the last year and a half, TikTok has been fairly new. And then it's the thing that draws kids in. So I don't know a lot about Discord. Does someone want to give a bit of an explanation about what Discord is?
That was just, I had a question. The person that said they don't like Discord, I mean, my oldest son is in grade 6 and he's not really on a lot of social media platforms, but I'm just curious, if you don't like it, maybe you could share what it was specifically about it that you don't like.
Yeah, that was what I was hoping for.
For sure, I can explain a bit more. This is Nicole speaking now.
Okay.
I think that the reason that I don't like it is probably because I don't know about parental controls, or if there really are. It seems like it's an app for older people, and there's a whole bunch of different chat rooms that you can find or join, and then you're talking to God only knows who. So I guess I don't like it because of how it's acting now, but I guess if I can find different ways to control that, or to know who she's speaking to, or you know, who she's in these chat rooms with, that would be helpful. And another question too, just to pose to parents, I'm the worst mother ever because I don't allow my children to have, well, they do have passcodes on their phone, but I need to know what they are so I can check their phones. Mm-hmm. But I'm the worst mother ever and nobody else does that. And the kids also have to have their phones in our room at night when they sleep, and I'm also the worst mother for that as well. I'm just wondering what other parents do in regards to that, or if I really am the worst mother in the world.
I think you raise a very good point, and I think that we as parents take that to heart, and we need to stand by what I'm seeing in the chat too, a lot of bad mothers out there. Taking the phones away from kids in the evening, I think, is almost necessary, because I think someone should take mine away too, because they go to sleep with them and they aren't sleeping. We know that. So to take it away so that they are sleeping and having their regular REM sleep without interruption, without a notification, without being able to go on YouTube, without getting on social media and being very tired in the morning, I think that is a very necessary thing. Don't fall for the fact that they need it because there's an alarm on it. All of that is kids manipulation. So if you're taking phones away from your kids and putting them somewhere else, thank you. I think that is a right thing to do, and it's not easy.
I just want to say I appreciate you saying that, and just everybody else writing in the chat, because, like, yes, I have my friends to speak to, but just I don't know any of you, so just hearing that and knowing that I'm not alone, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
You're not the worst parent, you're being a responsible parent.
Yes. Kids don't know what they don't know, right? And they're in a place where they are learning, and they're starting to separate from parents, and so they want to do what all the other kids are doing, but they'll thank you later. So right now you might be termed the worst mother or the worst father, but it'll come around. You're setting some very healthy limits. One thing I wanted to address, and I think that lots of people don't know this, and I learned about it when I maybe should have known more. I'll use a roadblocks example. Have you heard of the site Roadblocks? Just a couple of thumbs up or a yes. So I found out when I was at HGI that at first glance, you look at roadblocks as a very enticing site for kids with good things on it and a good game. There's a back door in roadblocks, and they can get through the back door, and then they're in a place sort of like you're explaining Discord. And so they either find it by chance or they find it because other kids say, hey, look at what we can do. And that's where they can get to a chat room where they are not talking to people they know. So if you just take this principle of having the front-facing roadblocks as a positive experience, and then knowing there's a back door, here's where we need more conversation, because for people who are bad, good parents, and they have passwords to Facebook, I learned, and maybe Adrian or Ryan can help me with this, but I learned a few years ago that there's a back door in Facebook. And it was a situation where a student was getting themselves into trouble because they were saving some very unacceptable pictures, but they had responsible parents and they were checking the phone every night, but they saw the pictures, like the nice friendly pictures the kid was saving in their photo reel, but they didn't know about the back door, and that was where everything else was saved. So there's way more going on for kids, and I think most of our kids are innocent users and they need help from parents knowing about when friends need to be blocked or how to handle a situation that has gone awry. But you also need to be very aware that there are some unacceptable places kids can get to through some of these social media apps. Ryan or Aaron, do you know any more? I've got only generalities about the Facebook backdoors, and I know kids aren't using Facebook much anymore, but I use that as an example.
Yeah, no, I don't have any particular information to add to that. Sorry, Peggy.
Okay. I think just an awareness that it's there.
Yeah, and I think every platform has a back door. You just assume that it's there. So I don't know that much about them because I'm not going in the back doors. However, I've been told to assume that they all have them, and that includes many of the games that they play interactively between one person and the other. Just, yes, we're playing a game, but if they're able to converse with each other and talk to each other about the game via that platform, then there's probably a back door.
Yeah. Nicole Stewart, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say something else as well. I have a daughter in grade 8 at Ecole, and I also have a daughter in high school. And something that I learned while I was checking my daughter's phone that's in high school is that a lot of the kids nowadays don't even text. They use Snapchat to text because then it's gone immediately. So a lot of parents that are on this call that are kids in younger grades, I don't know if your kids are doing that, but just be aware of that, because as soon as Snapchat they see it, it goes away, is how I understand it. So if you're not seeing texts on their phones from their friends, this could be why, is that it's through Snapchat and then it gets erased right away.
And Nicole, just the one thing that comes up at school is there are people that are very fast at screenshots. And when, let's say in grade 6, somebody's got an unacceptable picture, so they quickly send it out to their group. Someone inevitably does a screenshot and then it doesn't go away. And then basically they've got something to hold over somebody's head. So again, we're pointing to all the dark things that go on. There's lots of fun things with Snapchat, but I know when it first came out, I was at HGI and we had to really clamp down with kids, but they were fascinated by it. And we had a grade 8 class sending pictures of their ear or their nose to each other, and then they would just laugh and it would disappear. But then quickly it became the place to go for their conversations. And yes, a lot of people screenshot and save things to hold for future considerations.
It's my understanding too that if you do a screenshot through Snapchat that you get a notification. I don't know if anybody can confirm that or not, but
yeah, but you still have this snap. You still have the photograph.
Yeah.
And some kids have gotten themselves into some difficulty because of that. Do your kids come and talk to you when they've had a message of concern from somebody, or do they keep that to themselves? Okay, so I think any opportunity that you have to talk to kids, even to me picking something like the backdoor situation or how to set controls, the things that you do together with the explanations of why helps, because nobody likes people to just do things without them knowing. So that would be my suggestion. It gives you a good opportunity for a family discussion to say, this is why we're doing this, and let's look through this together, and I'm in charge of this phone. You people are paying for these phones.
And I know somebody earlier said that their child was in grade 6 and quite young. I don't know if they even had a phone yet, but that's the perfect time to be starting, is as they're getting the phone, start to set the rules and explain that they have to maintain that trust, because it's a privilege to have one of these phones. It's not necessarily a necessity. So it's a good time to start the conversation the younger the child is.
Yeah, our takeaway.
That's
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to jump in there and say that's reassuring, because we have not, our daughter doesn't have a cell phone yet, but we, have started some of those conversations, and sometimes it feels like, wow, she's so young to be starting this conversation. But then, you hear other parents who have kids just a grade older, or even in grade 6, that, these struggles are happening pretty early on in life. So we've said to her, you've got our trust, and until you break it. But we do have some pretty intense conversations with her, and we didn't know if that was right or not, and so we just went with our gut on that one.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly right, because I think parents would be surprised some of the things that we see at school that come up on the devices, and I think it's really good. And you might have the greatest kid in the world, but the other thing is that I would suggest is talk to your child about what to do if the conversation from going sideways or taking a wrong turn, to make sure that they're comfortable enough to talk to you about it. Might not be their conversation, but it might be somebody who they know.
Yeah, that's a tricky one with our daughter. We sit down and have these conversations, but she's just not there with talking openly with us about it. And so, we don't force it out of her, but we're trying to build some type of relationship so that, when these things do start to come up, we have that dialogue. But she's not, it's kind of like, okay, mom, okay, dad, I know, we learned this at school. It's still kind of like that, a bit of a tone.
Right.
So, but we keep at it. But at the same time, yeah, we don't want to force it on her, because we want it to happen a little bit more naturally between the three of us.
Yeah, and sometimes it's baby steps, but the most important thing is that you've opened the door and you're keeping at it.
Right.
I think it's as Ryan is saying, it's positive to start those conversations, even those difficult ones, are the doing things together, because you're going to need to have that conversation base with your adolescent as they go through a number of things. You're going to want them to be talking to you instead of turning to their peers. Adrian?
Talking from a parent perspective and from a teacher who's currently in high school, those are quite a variety. I mean, if you have more than one child, you're going to have more than one experience. And it may be a smooth road with one child, and it may be a rough road with another, and it might flip-flop back and forth. But what I've in my family noticed is it has to be a continual thing. It's not a single conversation, and then 6 months down the road when they can't take their phone out of their hands, backing up. As Ryan said, when you're trying to back this up, it becomes immensely more difficult and challenging than pre-establishing those rules and having a very clear idea of what the limits are and how you're going to deal with those, so that your children know, because all of our children are different, right? Some of them will take us to the limit all the time, and some of them are pretty compliant.
I think we got caught as parents. The cell phone and the device situation just grew up really fast, and people had them, and then we thought we needed them for our kids, and there we were, and then we're all in a place where we're sort of pulling back and going, hey, wait a minute, we sort of got ahead of ourselves here. And I would back up, I think, to the cell phone, the rise of cell phones and the concern for child safety. I think they came around the same time, and there were some safety concerns in communities that weren't there in the olden days. And it helped parents to feel more confident that their child had a way to contact them should an issue occur on the way to or coming home from school. But then they had a device that they were able to go way past just calling their parents. And I think even to talk to kids about the when to use it. And I know, tongue-in-cheek parents, you know that you do call your kids when they're at school, sometimes in the middle of math. And we have put some things in our handbook, and just to, when we have real live school in classes and all the kids are there and they're in the middle of an interesting math lesson and a phone rings, the teacher will always look at the child and say, put your phone away or put it up at the front. And the kid will say, it's my mom. And like, it's my mom, so I need to answer. So we need to think even about the manners around when we phone our kids. And tonight is not about that, but I just wanted to put that in too, because we probably haven't had a conversation about that either. So talking to kids, it's not just about cell phones, it's about lots of things.
I think Tanis has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Tanis.
Thank you. Yes, I'm joining the teams a little bit later, and I'm not sure if this is discussed yet or not, but I work for the Department of Justice, and I have a little bit of a resource of what these platforms are and how they operate, and the kind of acronyms the kids use, and the cryptic, codes they use and things like that. I'm wondering if anybody would be interested if I circulate that.
Is it something you can put in the chat?
Well, not right now because it's on my repository at work.
Okay.
But I certainly can circulate it to somebody who can then forward it around to this group if that's an interest for anybody.
Okay, it looks like people are very interested. I'm getting lots of yeses in the chat. I think you're seeing that.
Yeah. So who would be the best contact to forward this resource to, so that they can forward it off to this group?
It would be Nicole Page, and that's the PAC address. Nicole.
Okay.
Nicole, can you just remind us or put it in the chat? And then what we can do is all of the resources that we've put in the chat tonight, we can make a little sheet with all of them on there and circulate them out to the community. There it is, charleswood.pac@gmail.com. Thanks, Nicole. I just didn't remember it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Dinner table conversations. How many of you have the rule at home that you have a time, either a family game night or family dinner time, where there aren't devices at the table? Okay, we have one, we do. Good. Is that hard, or what happened to get there? Or was it just, this is what we're going to do, so now it's just become a habit? Anyone want to speak to that?
Tracy has her hand up.
Good. Thank you, Ryan. I'm not seeing these.
Okay.
Tracy.
Oh, I was just putting my hand up to say we don't allow any and never have any entertainment or TV devices on at the dinner table. And we also do best part of the day, worst part of the day, which I've done with the kids for years. And then it encourages them to talk about the good and the bad.
Okay. And they know it's coming, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a really good routine. And I think that maybe one of the things that gets in the way for parents is when, and I can speak for myself too, when our kid looks at us and says, well, everyone else is doing it, or Mom, you're the only one. And even though I know inside that it might not be exactly true, I feel maybe a little guilty if I'm thinking of doing something. So our kids get us. And we have to remember that if we really feel that that limit is important to us, don't let our kids get to us.
I was looking at Amanda's comment and said, but we need to turn off our riggers, otherwise it can be tempting. And the kids watch what the parents are doing. And I think Peggy and probably Adrian can comment on this or will nod to this. Quite often, what does your mom think or what does your dad think? Well, they're always on their phone. They don't have time to listen to this. So the kids sort of watch that too. So make sure that that you're giving a little bit of time the other way, that you're giving up your device as well.
Yeah. So it looks like people have a pretty good handle on setting limits around family time. So the issues are going to come back to the social media apps that kids get into that take them to places we don't want them to be. So that's where I think some of the resources we'll give you will help, along with the conversations. Adrian, did you have something to add?
No, I just wanted to support Ryan. That sometimes the toughest part of the conversation is apologizing for us not being the example that we want to set for our children.
We've all been guilty. Robin has a hand up.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say something that has worked for us in the past. I'm not going to say it works all the time, but if there's an app that seems to be, all the rage, everyone has it, why can't I? We will ask the kids to research it and tell us everything that they can about the app, tell us why they want to use it, tell us what the risks are in using it, go step by step through every single thing that's available in the app. And then I'll do the same, especially if it's something I haven't heard of. And then we'll sit down and we'll compare notes and we'll talk through it. And, is it something that they really need? Or is it something that they really want? And what are the risks? How are they going to deal with those risks? If there's certain options, are those going to be turned on? Are they going to be turned off? Those types of things. And that has actually really worked for us in the past. So I just wanted to share that.
It sounds like a great idea.
As an educator, I'm just beaming inside. There's a whole lot of education in there that has nothing to do with the actual phone. The process is excellent.
Yeah.
How about the turning off of options on phones? When you get a new phone, you as adults, do you go in and tweak things like location services and things like that? I know that for me, location services is tricky because every time I turn the phone off or it goes dead and then it comes back on, location services is back on again. And my worst story is my daughter in her first apartment downtown. And I just happened to be checking her Facebook and she put up a post in the middle of the night one night saying, I'm alone and I'm really lonely. And her location services was on. And I called her immediately and I said, what are you doing? Like, turn off location services. You're just inviting trouble. So I think even as a family going through your phone options and looking at that, because I don't think people take the time to look at some of the things that are going on without any knowledge of it. So Adrian, all the time, how many times have you found location services back on because of an update?
Yeah, well, oftentimes it's in French we say un mal pour un bien. So something that you don't really want, but you may have left it on because it has one little thing that you like. So I like to cycle, and Google keeps track of all of the places that I go, and then at the end of the month I get this update.
Yep.
And on the one hand I'm like, ooh, look at my cycle time, and on the other hand I'm like, ooh, look at what Google just did. Yeah. You know, so there's always an element to it that can be of use to us, but sometimes we change our mind, you know, and these are conversations. I'm really happy that you're having this conversation because it's one that's always going to be timely for us because the children that we serve will always be children. They'll always be coming to us at a certain developmental stage. And so my advice as a parent and as an educator would be we have to have an extreme amount of patience, and we really have to have a lot of follow through, even on those times that we're very tired. Because I know, especially with one of my children, I was extremely tired, and having the conversations that needed to be had, sometimes we're you know, at 11:30 at night when something just hit the fan and you had to have that conversation. So that's my 10 cents.
Have you had a conversation with your kids about digital footprint? That's another one that's important because I know we think it, but employers right now are searching social media sites and making a decision about hiring people, and they really, really are doing that. So again, in the research place, find somebody, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or whatever one you want to look at, and just pick a random person and go through and get a picture of that person's personality and ask your children, what do you think if an employer went through this profile, what would they think? And do you think this person would get a job? Because when you post something on your social media sites, it doesn't necessarily go away. Have you had those conversations with your kids? Referring how to handle it if the kid just finds it funny. That's a defense mechanism. I think that adolescents find a lot of things funny, and I can tell you that Ryan and I have found some things funny in the last few days that aren't funny. I think it's a defense mechanism for an adolescent that just really doesn't know enough about it to make a decision, and maybe they're nervous about it, or maybe they don't care and they're just looking at the superficial picture, right? I think you just have to keep trying and do the what ifs. And I know that's hard, Nicole.
And I think part of it is human nature. If it's not affecting me, then I don't really have to take it seriously. But if it was something that all of a sudden that they were being badmouthed on social media, or they had a photo being circulated that they didn't want circulated, then it would hit home. So I think part of that is human nature, that if, as long as it's, you know, somebody else, it doesn't bother me, but we have to try to understand that, yes, it will affect me eventually. You know, it might be the other person today, but it could be me tomorrow.
So we're really in an interesting place with ethics and ethical boundaries or foundations, because I think it would be fair to say that all of the kids that are in school right now will have technology touch part of the jobs that they do when they're employed. So we have an idea that using technology in a productive way or in a creative way or in a production way is going to be here. It's the social media part that we need to keep a handle on. And it's been very difficult in the last year because kids need to connect with other kids. And the only way they've really been able to do that is in a social media way. And that has caused us grave concern because none of us want that for our kids. We want them outside playing and being in sports and connecting with kids that way, and it just hasn't been there, which has put us into a really serious quandary. So for the people that joined recently, we are recording this to put this up. We didn't want to take the presentation stance because the community all has pieces to share. So we've had basically an open conversation. We do have some things in the chat, some links and some references that we will pull together and send in a handout electronically to not just the people here tonight, to the Ecole community, Ecole Charleswood, sorry, community. Any other questions or things you would like some more information on? Because we've just touched on things tonight.
Is there anything people feel we've missed or haven't touched on?
Okay, well, let's try a summary. We started out talking about restricting time on devices, and I think most of the parents said that it is important to restrict time and to also not have a phone or a device available at bedtime or during the night. I think from there we moved, and Ryan and Adrian jump in anytime. I think we moved to talking about different social media apps and how there's back doors and how to talk to our kids and set limits on some of those things, or also have the same passwords as our kids so we can actually do some checking to see what our kids are up to.
And despite what your children say, that does not make you the worst parent in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We then talked about the tech-free dinners. I'm missing something in there. We had a volunteer be able to send some resources from the justice area to talk about things kids are accessing and some of the lingo that they use that we might not understand. talked about checking out our phones together and going through some of the settings that we can do and how we need to review those settings, because really it is opening to the world. Talked about the importance of devices right now, not necessarily phones, but devices for doing schoolwork. But yes, when you're doing schoolwork, you can go to some other places unless you're using a Pembina Trails device. They're pretty locked down. And as an adult looking at that, they are pretty locked down, but I've known kids in every school that I've been at that can figure out a workaround to open up things that the division would be shocked they're able to open up. Can you speak to that, Adrian?
Thankfully, no.
Okay, okay, so Facebook is blocked in Pembina Trails, and I have known students in every school that have been open and honest with me and come with their device and say, but Miss Hobson, if you do this and then you do this and you do this, you're on Facebook. The other one, following up the hilarious one, and I, as the principal, find it hilarious, but our projectors right now are all connected to our network, and kids that are a little bit clever can figure out how to control the projectors without the teacher knowing that they're doing that. So in the middle of a class, the projector will just either shut off or start showing something else that the teacher doesn't know what's going on. So I unfortunately find that hilarious because I think that's pretty creative of the kids. And of course I'll talk to them and try to not be smiling while I'm doing it. But our kids are creative beings, and they've come a long way from note writing. And if I was in a class and from my phone I could control the projector, I think it would be sort of cool to try that too. So some of it is not intentionally bad behavior. It's, hey, do you think I could do this? And it's entertaining for them, and they find the whole thing hilarious. And if you think about it as parents for a minute, it is sort of funny.
Yeah.
But we would prefer that that wouldn't happen.
Absolutely.
Sort of wrecks the lesson.
Yeah. Another part of the summary was that you had spoken about students' digital footprints and what we actually want them to learn from the exercise, and how what we do online is something that potentially will impact our future, whether it's personal or professional, through work.
And there are, I'm not going to, of course, use names, but there are teachers in Pembina Trails that have gotten into difficulty with the Board of Trustees because of things that they have posted that are not work related, that's on their own time and they're social, but they're totally inappropriate, and it represents the division in a bad way. So we are cautioned every year about what we do on social media, and sometimes people just forget, but it does come back to be an issue in employment. Tennis?
Hi, yes, I'm not sure if this was covered today or previously, but I'd just like to share the reminder that, you know, with family sharing accounts, parents have more control than they think they might have in terms of the setting options and what their children are allowed to navigate. And also your service provider typically will have an app where you can control data usage and things like that. I know Wi-Fi is readily available in the community, but those are just some considerations as well. I know in terms of, like, with my child, if there's ever been any situation where he doesn't need to access his personal device for school, I have limited his usage through the Rogers app or the family sharing options as well. So just a little bit of a reminder there as well.
Okay, thank you.
I see Caitlin has a question too.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Caitlin?
Sorry, yeah, I tuned in a little late too, but I don't know if it was covered, but are you teaching that stuff in classrooms, like the social media aspect of things and that sort of stuff in class? And then where can we view this whole presentation later?
I'll put it up on our website. We'll put that up, and we're also going to summarize the resources that were in the app and send those out electronically.
Okay, great. And then, so do you ask, just the first question, do you talk about it in class? About
it's students and parents sign an acceptable use policy at the beginning of every year in our division, but some kids have looked at me and said, well, I signed that, but I don't really read it. So our first responsibility is to make sure the kids understand what that means. And it's basically their footprint in the division. And we go from basically the overall rules to things like you do not take a picture or a video of someone without permission. And just because you're out on the playground and you're taking a video and you say to your friend, hey, can I take a video of you? But you're taking a video and there's people in the background in the field, you can get yourself into trouble that way. So from explaining the expectations to also getting into the community safety and internet safety that is covered each year, either by teachers or by our community constables that come out and do some presentations to kids. And Darren Laminin was invited tonight, but he was unable to make it. He has a background in internet safety, and he's a great one to have present either to parents or to the kids.
Thank you.
And I would add that much like parents do, yes, we have these conversations with the class per se, but as individual situations come up throughout the year or as individual students make comments, those are always the teachable moments that teachers respond to in the class. And yeah, it might have nothing to do with that day's lesson, but it is a very important life lesson to the student. Those things get addressed on an ongoing basis all the time.
Okay, I should mention my son was one who just discovered things you could find on a Pembina Trails device that the teachers were shocked that he could find. And it was quite easy. So I think they even changed things after he discovered those.
Well, and that just to me talks to the creativity and the knack, for lack of a better word, that kids have to explore way more than maybe the adults do. So again, I would reiterate the point that there's a whole bunch more on these devices than we are aware of. And we use sort of like our brain, right? We use a tiny fraction of this device. And there's a whole bunch more on there. A presentation about 5 years ago at a different school, we were talking about internet safety, and a mom had said that she was so concerned about what her son was doing. She'd taken away their computer and he wasn't able to access it. And about 20 minutes later in the presentation, she said, you mean he can do the same things from the phone? And felt badly for her, but she was just totally unaware that that's just basically exactly what she took away from her son. It is a computer and it does everything he could have done on that. So kids will go further in looking and sometimes innocently get to places where they can trick us and get to Pembina Trails sites, change things, or can get to places where they get themselves into some trouble and they don't really want to be, but then they're fascinated and they keep going. Nicole?
Yes, I was just going to speak to that as well. I know somebody had just mentioned about different controls that you can get. We've got Shaw where we can turn on and off the Wi-Fi. And just like you were speaking to, we would turn the phones off at night and all the Wi-Fi, but we didn't turn off the computers because we thought, well, they're not going to bring a computer into their room. But yes, they brought the laptop into the room and talk to their friends that way. So just learning lessons for parents as well is, we keep learning through our children.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating thing to kids, right? They can connect with pretty much anything in the world, and why wouldn't we be fascinated by that? And then they learn from their friends different things, and they are really connecting with their friends. But as parents, you need to put the parameters on that. Fences. I think the other thing I referred to for parents is driving. I know we're in middle school, so we're not at driving yet, but think about what is the difference of taking kids out, learning how to park, learning how to drive, learning the speed limits, going and getting our beginners, going and getting their driver's license, and then feeling comfortable and having trust in our kids that we're going to hand them the keys to our car. And we know there might be an accident, and we know that there might be a speeding ticket, but we're ready for them to start learning on their own, and we're ready to trust them. To me, handing our kids a phone is pretty much the same thing, but there's not phone licenses. But there's an awful lot of safety things and mental health things we need to be aware of when we hand children a device with free access.
As somebody put it once, Peggy, you wouldn't take your 12 or 13-year-old child and drop them off in the worst neighborhood that you can imagine in the middle of the night and just leave them there and go back home and sleep well. And sometimes that's what we're really doing when we're handing them a computer or a phone, and we're not aware of how safe they're being. You know, you're putting them into a neighborhood where you don't know what's going to happen. So you just have to be very careful.
Thanks, Ryan. And I think that the most important thing we talked about tonight is the conversations we need to have with our kids and the learning we need to do with them, because the process in that is valuable. Does anybody have any resources that they want to add to our list? If you do, you could put it in the chat or just email Nicole Page at the PAC address that's in the chat, or email the school or me or Ryan directly. Well, and thanks everybody for tonight. It was hard to do a presentation. What an evening like this can do is just highlight the different things we need to be aware of as a community.
And if you know of somebody, a neighbor, somebody who wasn't able to join us tonight, and you think this would help them, tell them that they can find the recording of this on the website for their children.
So it's in your hands, everybody. Thank you.